In 1914, poet Rupert Brooke wrote these words, "If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England." Brooke died in France a year later during World War I. We mark Memorial Day every year to remember that there are corners of foreign fields around the world, marking the sacrifices necessary to establish and preserve the freedoms we enjoy. These corners of earth are forever America, forever the land of the free and the home of the brave. These small plots of land were bought and paid for by America's best and brightest in the currency of blood and toil. They are monuments to the heroism of our citizen soldiers, and their glory will never fade so long as we, the living, stay determined to remember them. Therefore, we set Memorial Day weekend aside to remember the sacrifices that hallowed these grounds, sacrifices given not just by service members, but by their families and other loved ones as well. Every Gold Star family member owns a share in those estates. For you and I, these courageous service members and their families offered up their bodies, their minds, their liberties, and their relationships to the altar of freedom. Therefore, on this Memorial Day weekend, it is appropriate that we put into perspective just how large that sacrifice has been in recent memory. Since 2001, over 7,008 U.S. military service members have made this sacrifice in the global war on terror, and over 50,000 have been wounded. But also since 2001, 30,107 U.S. military service members and veterans have taken their own lives. That is more than 4 times the amount that have been killed in action during that same time. These statistics are staggering. They prove that the unseen enemies can be as deadly as the ones we can see. And on Memorial Day, more than any other day, our heartstrings should come undone as we meditate on their sacrifice. The cost of freedom never depreciates. One of these casualties to the unseen enemy was Senior Chief Chad Wilkinson, a Navy SEAL and lifelong servant to our country. Through 21 years of service, Chief Wilkinson and his wife Sara endured numerous tours of duty, high cycle times for both training and combat deployments, and the frequent loss of brothers in arms. Sadly, the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and blast wave injuries led Chief Wilkinson to die by suicide in October of 2018. In the wake of this tragedy, Chief Wilkinson's wife Sara has carried on his fight and risen as an advocate for the fight against veteran suicide. Through her platform as a renowned swim and fitness coach and her partnership with veteran-owned company GoRuck, Sara is using her voice and her story to combat the veteran suicide epidemic and change the narrative surrounding the unseen enemies. By sharing her story, she sets an example of resilience, fortitude, and leadership for military families and for patriots everywhere. We are honored to have her in our midst today.
Well, good morning, church, and welcome to our Norfolk and Seaboard campuses who are joining us, as well as our online campus. And I'm honored this morning to get to talk with and interview Sara Wilkinson. Church, can we welcome her this morning?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's so good to have you. And we met a couple weeks ago, and we sat down and had a great conversation. And I just want to tell you, she is a very brave, very gutsy girl. And I think you're going to there's going to be some big takeaways this morning for all of us, honestly. So, Sara, before we actually get into the questions I have, one of the ways you continue Chad's legacy is through the Chad1000x. And so I'm just wondering if you would explain that, and then we're going to cut out to maybe look at there's a couple guys out the front who are doing that. So can you just tell us, what's the Chad1000x?
Sure. My husband had a goal to climb the 7 summits, and he climbed 2 of them. One of them the year he died. And to train for it, he would do 1,000 step-ups on a 20-inch box with a 45-pound pack. He used a projector in our garage, and he would project the mountain on the back of the garage door because he was incredibly focused, and he wanted to know he could reach his goal. I mentioned this during his memorial, and some friends took to it as a physical challenge and a workout. Over time, that's grown to become what's now called Chad1000x. We try to do this workout, encourage everybody around the globe to do the workout on or around Veterans Day. This weekend is Memorial Day, where we honor the fallen. Veterans Day is when we honor our current military. Chad can't come back, but I think the workout serves as a bigger representation of kind of the mental struggle. 1,000 step-ups isn't completely impossible. It's challenging, but you just have to keep moving and keep stepping up. And it's surprising where your mind will wander in that hour or so it takes you to complete it. And so we're encouraging people to do this workout around Veterans Day or with a fellow veteran or friends, just as kind of a big representation that we support them, that we stand with them, that we will step up for them. They need us.
Awesome. So today, just again to raise awareness and give a bit of a focus to what's going to be happening in November, we've got a couple of guys and maybe a couple of girls even who are doing it. So Josh, are you there?
I'm here. My mind's definitely wandering.
How's it going? Can you tell us who's out there with you?
Yeah, I got Chaz next to me. I got Liz next to him. And Zach Ramos next to her. Also, just wanted to double check. It's definitely 1,000, right? It's not 500?
1,000.
So what number are you up to right now?
367.
Whew, you got a little ways to go. Well, well done. Well done, guys. We're going to cheer you on. I think later in the service, we're going to come back and see how you're doing. So go for it. Thanks, Josh.
Awesome. Thank you.
Wow. Lucky them, right? All right. Sarah, to you. Where did you meet Chad?
The first day of high school.
Wow.
So I was 13.
13. And so this has been a love story that it has, gone across decades. I think one of the funniest stories, because you started dating in high school, is that right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Went to homecoming together.
Yep.
Yep. And then a couple of breakups, which obviously you're both from military families, right?
Right. We are born and bred military kids. My entire life is wrapped in the fabric of our flag. I don't know another life, but we went to a military high school where we met, but then naturally as our dads had to change duty stations and we moved, created long distance, so we did break up a couple times in there as young kids.
Yeah. One of the stories I loved that I just thought was great was your dad was a colonel in the Marines, right?
Yes.
And Chad ended up, he'd gone through BUD/S and was at Fayetteville, is that right? Is it med school there that he was doing?
He was doing a medic course there, yeah.
Okay. And so you were like, I want to be with this guy, I want to go to Fayetteville, there's a college. So what did you do to convince your dad?
My dad always said if I wanted him to get on board with anything, I had to have my ducks in a row. And so I made a presentation to him of why I should get to go to Methodist College, which is a small school in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I didn't necessarily really want to go to that school, but there was a boy that was very close that I wanted to be near. So I presented it, he approved, I went.
I'm impressed, but you lasted a semester, right?
I hated it.
The things we do for love, right, Sarah? Right. Yeah. So then after that, how long was it after that before you were married?
We got married in 2000, so about 4 years we dated long distance. I ended up going to the University of Florida, go Gators, and he would travel, he would leave teammate on a Friday and drive 14 hours to Gainesville, Florida, and visit me, and then turn around Sunday morning and drive back.
Wow. So Chad's father and uncle were both Navy SEALs, is that right?
Yes, they were.
So it was in his blood. This was something he wanted to do, even in high school. Do you remember him saying to you?
Yeah, he would tell me, and his mom and dad would probably tell me he wanted to be a SEAL from the time he was about 12. When we met, I didn't even know what a Navy SEAL was, but his bedroom was covered in Navy SEAL posters, and he has 2 brothers, and that's what they did. They grew up playing kind of like military man. So I think it was always in his heart. I think it's just in his DNA. I think it was what he was born to do, and I still say that today.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about his career. He was in the military for 21 years. Tell us about his career.
Yeah, he went to Buds, which is on the West Coast, where they all have to go to finish training, and came back, was slated to be a medic. And his first duty station was SEAL Team 8, which is here on the East Coast in Little Creek. And he was there for 10 years, but it's interesting how life works. We started to think maybe the grass is greener on the other side. We were military kids. We knew what it was like to have our dads gone all the time. And we thought, you know what, we need to get out of the military because we need our kids to have that stability. After 10 years, he got out. And his last trip was a jump trip, and he would say that they would fall out of the plane and they'd say, "You're not gonna do this with your pharmaceutical buddies," because that was his civilian job he was switching to. We got out, we had a great life. We had really what most people would consider the American dream. He had a great job, we had 2 little kids, we had great friends, a great house, but we were completely miserable. Because like I said, I think he was born to do this. We lasted 2.5 years, and we came back.
So then you ended up in California for a little bit, and then he's asked to come over here, is that right?
We did, yeah. We sold half of what we owned. We put the other half in storage, and we went out to California. We were there for a bit, and then he ended up coming back to the East Coast, and that's where he did the rest of his time.
Wow. You know, just a little while, obviously I grew up in Australia, so the whole military world and the Navy SEAL world has been very great for our family to learn about. And I remember there was a documentary I think Discovery put out on just the BUDS training. And I remember we were watching it, I think as a family, and in fact I think we showed our staff as well, because their focus, the intensity with which they are on team and they care for each other is, in fact the Bible says in 2 Timothy 2, it talks about as Christ followers, let's not get caught up in stuff that doesn't matter, but be like soldiers, be like the military who have a task and they're on it. And nothing to me speaks more loudly than what the Navy SEALs do. They are, and Chad was, ultra focused on their mission.
Absolutely, I think they have to be. You'll find most of these guys, they're incredibly intelligent, type A, goal-oriented, very driven, very focused on their goal. They can't really be unwavered in that, or they'd never make it.
Right. I've heard you say in a couple of interviews, these guys are warriors. They're just born to do this. But I would say their wives are pretty much the same. Like I've had a conversation with you, and you're a gutsy girl. You're a go-get-it type of a person. But talk to us about what is life like as a team wife? What does that look like?
Between us, I think some of us have to be tougher than team guys.
Yeah, right.
No, it is tough. It's a tough life. Military spouse in general, whether you're a husband or a wife to someone in uniform, I think it's just a challenging place to be. Being married to these guys in particular, they're gone a lot. He wasn't at the appointments when I learned the sex of our children. I carried most of my pregnancies alone. I can count how many birthdays and anniversaries we really did have together. It's a lot of travel, not only just deployments overseas and the danger of that, but just all the training trips. And so you have to really learn to be incredibly independent, very resilient, and you have to surround yourself with really incredible friends.
Yeah. So handling the constant deployments, was there ever a time of, oh man, he's got to go again? Or are you just good with, this is who we are and this is what we do? It's kind of a calling for both of you, like this, and your family, like this is who we are and what we do. But is there ever a moment where you're like, darn, these deployments, or you're just good with it?
Oh no, I think it's only human to be frustrated or disappointed or sad that they have to go, but you also kind of know in the back of your mind that that's what you signed up for, and that's your commitment. Yeah. So there's no backing down.
Yeah, well done. What's your best memory of Chad? Maybe there's a few.
I don't know. I mean, I have so many memories. He's really funny, playing practical jokes, and I don't know if any are really worth sharing here, but just he was a really quiet guy to most people, but not with us. And he had the best sound effects, and he was always making noise and making jokes, and just having that life in our house was really good for us. Yeah.
So piggybacking off that, what's been the hardest thing about losing Chad?
I think there's a couple layers in there. As a spouse, I've also often wondered, is it harder to lose the person that loved you, or is it harder to lose the person that you loved? And I think that changes from time to time, but I would say overall for me, you're gonna make me cry.
It's okay.
It's really hard to lose the person that you love,
Yeah.
because you've got nowhere for it to go. Sorry.
No, you're good, you're good.
I think for my children, we have 2 children, it's really sad to think that they will not, forgive me, his influence in their life has an end date. He's not around to continually influence them. And there were so many traits about Chad that I admired. And it's about trying to carry those traits in myself so that I can also instill them in my children.
Yeah, yeah. How are your kids doing, by the way?
Our children were 14 and 17 when he died, and I don't think there's ever a better age for a parent to pass away, or a worse age. That's not what I'm saying, but my children were very aware of who was missing in their life.
Yeah.
At those ages, they each had their own unique relationship with him, and so it's been challenging because with those ages, it's very complex grief anyway, and we've all carried it in our own way. And you know, as a parent, for those of you guys that are parents out there, you will put yourself last to always care for your children, and it's pretty challenging guiding them through their unique grief process as you're grieving yourself.
Yeah.
But overall, they're finding their path. Our daughter's in school out in California, and she moved out there and decided that she wanted to move back home, and so she moved back home, and then she decided that that wasn't the right choice and she wanted to go back. I think she needed that clarity, and she sent me a text after I got her there in March, and she said, "Thank you so much for moving me back out here. I'm very happy here."
Good.
I think that was the greatest thing to hear.
Yeah. And so she's kind of found her place, you know.
Yeah, she's finding her way. She's a little bit more of a free bird, so it works well for her to be off on her own and going to school and finding her own path. She's going to do great.
And then you have a son going off to college?
He is, yeah. He'll graduate in June. He's a senior currently, and he's going to ECU in the fall.
Nice.
And I think that will be a really good change that he needs. It's been a little hard. It's a double-edged sword. It's great to be in Virginia Beach, but there are times that it's very hard to stay here. So I look forward to the opportunity where he can get out of town for a little bit and experience a new life.
Yeah. So Chad was an excellent SEAL, quieter guy. So this might be a harder question to answer, but how do you think he would want to be remembered? And that's hard because he never put himself out. It's not, you know, that's not who he was. But what do you think are the qualities that you think most people would remember him by?
It's funny you asked that because I just shared the other day, I think he would really struggle with having a workout named after him with his name in it. He was an under-the-radar guy. I think that he would hope that people would see him as dedicated and selfless, and loyal. I do see him that way.
Yeah, an incredible dad, you know, incredible husband, you know, all those incredible qualities, yeah. So, very good. What has helped you? You know, obviously we've had a conversation, and I don't know if you know this expression, Sarah, when someone walks through something and there's, you know, it's like you go through the fire and there's no smoke on them. And as I sat down and talked with you, I can honestly say that's what I felt about you. I mean, you're not even 4 years into this. So this is something that happened in October 2018. But there was no, now obviously this is something you never wanted. This is your worst nightmare. But there's no smoke on you. There's no bitterness. There's no, like, you have walked through it so well. What's helped you in your journey of grief? Maybe even thinking back to the early days, or even as it's progressed, what has been some keys maybe, or the things that stand out to you that go, that is what really has helped me?
I think it's twofold. Growing up as a military kid, you really learn to push people away and keep people at an arm's distance because they don't stay anyway. I went to 14 schools before I graduated. After his passing, I had to really change that mindset. I have some amazing, amazing friends in this town, and to see how many of them step forward for me, that was pretty big. And so when all I wanted to do was have Chad, and I realized I couldn't have him anymore, I had to turn and really value and appreciate the people that were and continue to still be there. I also think, going back to what I said about the traits that Chad carried, he was brave, he was quiet, he was stoic, a leader, a teacher, and he was unwavering in his goals. And I want to carry that forward, and I know the pain that this loss creates, and I will do everything in my power to not have anybody else experience that.
Wow. Wow. That's truly amazing, and the mark of an exceptional person. So, Sarah, I just honor
Thank
you.
you.
I just honor you for that. How, as a community, can we make this weekend more than just Happy Memorial Day? I know that's something that you're pretty passionate about. How do we honor and respect those who have lost loved ones? Because for those of us who aren't up close and personal to someone who's lost someone, there is that, it's barbecues, cookouts, and a fun day on the water, or picnics, or whatever, and it's Happy Memorial Day. But it really is way deeper and more than that.
I was thinking a lot about this the other day, because there's so many holidays. Almost all of our other holidays start with happy. Happy Easter, Happy New Year, fill it in, and then Merry Christmas, or and maybe that's just why Happy Memorial Day fell into that same line of thought. But if you just take a second, it's not happy. That's why we're celebrating it. It's sad. And for those of us who are, like myself, a Gold Star family member, or someone that's lost someone in uniform, this is every day for us. It's 365. So we want you to have your barbecues, and we want you to celebrate friends with family, because they died for you to have those freedoms. We want you to live your life.
Right.
But I would really like to see us switch the terminology and just wish people an honoring of Memorial Day. And it's just a simple one-word change, but it says a lot to those of us that are still here. So maybe we can all pay that forward together as a family and start to change that narrative a little bit. And again, enjoy your weekend, but somewhere throughout the weekend, just take a small moment, as you guys have already done this morning, and just think about the people that are no longer here. Maybe they're people you know, maybe you don't know anybody directly, but just take a moment and think of them. It means a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. One of the things that is also very important to you is the wording around suicide and changing that. And, I knew a family in California, a couple of families actually, who, their pastors have died by suicide, which is something you really want to use that phraseology, died by suicide, as opposed to committed suicide. Can you just talk to us about that?
Sure. Suicide, I know that's a word that's pretty uncomfortable for a lot of people, and I can see people squirm when they say the word to me, but for me, I carry this every single day. Right. So the word doesn't bother me. It's the truth. But for some reason, we've gotten in the habit of saying committed suicide, and when you do that, it still puts blame on the person that's no longer here. People commit murder. Right. People commit burglary. Those are chosen acts, And I really do believe when people pick this path that they're on and they take their life, there's something so much larger at play. For my husband, it was blast wave injury and years of service. For other people, they struggle with mental health or addiction, and there's so many, I don't want to get into it, but there's so many other avenues that there's something else at play that's happening that they're not really able to make that choice. And so let's switch from saying committed suicide, because people don't commit cancer or commit heart attacks. They die by cancer, and they die by heart attacks, and they also die by suicide.
I think that's a great distinction. And also you would say, and we would all wholeheartedly agree with you, that even though Chad didn't die in a training accident or out in the battlefield, the war really did take his life. I mean, that's the effects of that. And so I think too, it's like dying by suicide, it was effects of what he had lived and the work he had done that brought him to this place. So thinking about people who, you know, spouses or families, and they have someone who's been on deployment, gone out to several deployments maybe, and they come back and they're just worried about them. They just don't seem themselves, their mental health seems a little bit off. What would you say to those families? How can they help a loved one who they know is struggling? What advice could you give them?
Yeah, that's a pretty complex question, and maybe some of you guys sitting here have experienced it. And when I say this, I'm not trying to be funny, but my first thought is kind of TSA rules: see something, say something. Yeah. Trust your gut. So if there's someone around you and they just seem off, and your gut's telling you that, you're probably right. Don't be afraid to ask them, you know, are they okay? And also don't be afraid to ask them if they've thought about taking their life. It might seem very counterintuitive, and a lot of people think if I ask them, then I might put that thought into their head, but research actually says no, that's not the case. It's better to ask them and kind of put it out on the table. And really, when people are in a really bad spot, maybe they're not going to share where they're struggling, but take it on yourself, you know, kind of as a fellow American friend, family member, to try to find them the resources to help them. And especially for our people in military, yes, there's suicide hotlines, and those might work, and there's the VA, and those might work, but sometimes it's just talking to a fellow friend, or, as you've heard the term, battle buddy. We need to get these military talking amongst each other too, and not just squashing it under the table.
And helping the person put their hand up for help, which I think is hard, especially for the warrior who, you know, he or she is just battle ready all the time. I think I heard you talk about, you know, for Chad was a quiet guy anyway. So this caught you completely off guard. You didn't see it coming, but later in reflection you went, well, he got quieter and he didn't want to be around people. There were probably some signs, but you just don't know. And
that's a lot of the reason why I speak up so much, because, you know, you learn a lot in hindsight. Yeah. And I can look back. I mean, he stopped smiling in 2016. I look back at all of our photos, and just some of the things that he would say seem a little clearer now.
Yeah. All right, just as we are finishing up, how are you honoring Chad by living? That's a great phrase that you use. I'm honoring Chad by living. Obviously, the Chad1000x has been fantastic, and I love it because you were saying that as his memorial, you talked about this workout that he did, and it organically took off, and you're like, wow, God, thank you for that. But is there anything else you're doing? What's your hope and mission for this season? So how are you honoring Chad, continuing to, by living? And what's your hope and mission for this next chapter?
Oh, those are big questions.
Sarah, they are big questions.
I do say that term, live big. You know, we served as almost 21 years in the military, and I don't regret that at all, but there were often times that I would tell him, I'm just waiting to live my life, because he was gone all the time, or busy with this, or I was busy with that, and leaning into the people in my life, I started to realize, like, we are all going to experience hardship in this lifetime. That's I'm sharing a tragic story, but you all carry a story. You can't get off this earth without heartache either. Mine just happened traumatically and young. And thinking about that made me realize that you kind of just have to walk into it, as hard as that is. And the devastation I felt from his loss at 41 years old made me realize I have a lot of life to live. And I want to feel all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, every single inch of it. And I want to live it because of how much I loved him, if that makes sense. Yeah. Moving forward, still using my voice as a platform, this is just one story. They gave the statistic of over 30,000 deaths. And Chad is not an anomaly. There are many amazing men that serve next to him, and many struggle, and many do not. I'm not saying that either, but it's to use his story to really help others matters. And just, I think it's really time as just Americans that we step up for our veterans because they've done so much for us.
Very well said, very well said. Sarah, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for having me, I appreciate it.
Thank you for being very brave and for using your voice to help others. And I know the impact of your life is going to be exponential as you get this message out and tell your story. So this morning as we head back to Norfolk and Seaboard Church, can we thank Sarah for being here?